Right, so hello and welcome back to Books and Things and welcome to another video. And today I thought I would talk about some of the books that I have been working on recently. So for those of you who don't know, I work at a publishing house. I work at Bonnier Books UK on the imprints Zaffa and Manila Press. I'm an assistant editor, so I do like line editing and desk editing. You probably don't know what those things are. You probably don't need to, but basically I work on all of the books that I'm about to talk about. So I've been working at Bonnier for a year. I made a video several months ago talking about some of the books that I have been working on and reading for work. And I thought now I would make another video talking about some more of the books that I have been working on and that have been published or are soon to be published. So last time I think I went up to like books publishing in August, so now I'm going to start from books that published in September 2019 through to books that are publishing in February 2020. So these are all like their first outing. I'm not going to talk about paperback follow-ons because I've already talked about them other places. But here are some books that I've been working on in the last year or so. The first one I want to mention is Live a Little by Madeline Rees. This published at the beginning of September, and this is a commercial women's fiction book focusing on two sisters, British sisters who go on a road trip around the US. These sisters are incredibly different. Lottie is very set in her ways, very organised, whereas Tina is very carefree, very extroverted, very loud, very wild, and likes everything to be as spontaneous as possible. Lottie is about to get married to her long-term boyfriend, but before she does, Tina persuades her to take a road trip around the US with her, partly to kind of make Lottie let her hair down for once, but also to try and kind of build the bond between them that is broken, and that has been broken since their other sister Mia died. They were always a three, and now that Mia is no longer there, they are kind of struggling to learn how to be sisters with just the two of them. I really enjoyed working on this. It's a really fun novel, and I especially like the kind of culture clash between the US and the UK, and like following these two characters and everyone they meet along the way around the US and to lots of different places that I've never been to. So yeah, I would really recommend Live a Little. I mean, I would recommend everything here because I worked on them and so I have like a strong emotional attachment to them all. But yeah, Live a Little was great. Another novel I worked on that published at the beginning of September was The Nursery by Asia Mackay. So this is a comedic spy thriller. So this is the second in a series. The first is Killing It and the second is The Nursery. We follow this woman called Lex, who is a spy and an assassin, whose job therefore naturally puts a lot of pressure on her, but also she has to keep her spy life a secret from her husband and her 2-year-old daughter, and also deal with her 2-year-old daughter. And we follow the kind of clash between Lex trying to be a spy and also trying to be a good mother, and what happens when her sort of private life and her work life kind of clash together a little bit too much. It's really, really funny. One of the things I love about Asia's books is how funny a writer she is and how well she like mingles the drama and the action with the humour, because I just think it's really, really good fun. So even if you're not someone who like reads a lot of spy books or thrillers or action books in general, I think you'd really enjoy this because it's also really funny and it's very kind of character-led and focuses a lot on Lex's family life and the kind of realistic difficulties of keeping her work life secret from her family. So certainly another one that I recommend. The next one I want to mention is The Girls from Greenway by Elizabeth Woodcraft, which published in the middle of September. This is a saga novel. I've spoken about the genre of saga before on my channel because I feel like it's not something that's talked about on BookTube very much, but I really, really love saga. Basically what saga is commercial, very plot-led historical fiction, usually focused on young women and them kind of battling against social issues. And it's always really good fun, and I really, really love working on this genre. So this book is set in the 1960s, and we follow Angie and Doreen, who are two sisters growing up in Chelmsford, living on a estate with their mother and their father. They have a very difficult relationship with their father, who is very often drunk and kind of doesn't respect his wife or his daughters. Angie and Doreen are very, very different people, but they have a close relationship until they happen to fall for the same man. But what I really love about The Girls from Greenway, and what I really enjoyed working on The Girls from Greenway, is that while the kind of central romantic love triangle is really important in this book, actually a lot of it is about the girls' careers and their aspirations for the future. Angie wants to be a fashion designer, and the kind of difficulty of trying to get into that business as a woman in the 1960s is really interestingly explored in The Girls from Greenway, and is something that I really like about it, and something about it that I think makes it really, really interesting. And The Girls from Greenway actually has a special place in my heart because it was the first like non-published Bonnier book that I read. I read it in my very first week at Bonnier. In a way, I think it was like the first book I ever did any work on, which is kind of cool. So there we go. The next one I want to mention is Moonlight Mayfair by Anton de Beck. You may know of Anton de Beck from Strictly Come Dancing if you're in the UK. This is Anton's second book. His first one, Enchanted Evening, came out last year, and both of these books are part of the same series, and they are set in the Buckingham Hotel in the 1930s, following all of these different characters that are drawn together by this hotel. We follow some of the guests in the hotel, some of the staff there, including a chambermaid called Nancy and a demonstration dancer called Raymond de Guise. Moonlight over Mayfair picks up where the first book left off, but focusing on a few new different characters as well as some of the ones that we've known from book one. I really enjoy working on these books. They're really good fun. I love the 1930s and 1930s history, and I really like how in One Enchanted Evening and Moonlight over Mayfair we see a real like cross section of society, people from the very upper class and people from much far below that, in a quite Dickensian way actually, which is quite fun. And there's plenty of dancing and drama and tension as kind of war looms on the horizon. We're getting into the late 1930s now. Then I have a few more saga books to mention. The next one I want to mention is A Woman's War by Simon Block, which came out back in October. So this is the second in a series as well. The first was Keep the Home Fires Burning, and actually both books follow on from the ITV series Home Fires, which was cancelled a while ago, and the writer of the TV series decided to carry on the story in novel form with Bonnier, which is exciting. So this is the second book in the series, and we're following on from where the first one left off, following various characters in the town of Great Paxford during the Second World War, focusing really on the women of this town and how they kind of keep the town going while the men are away at war. And we're following the lives of various women who are kind of focused around the WI in the town and looking at how war affects all of their lives. Another wartime saga, but this time World War I rather than World War II, is A Precious Gift by Rosie Goodwin. This is set from sort of a few years before the First World War up until after the First World War, and we follow a young woman called Holly who at the beginning of the book runs away from her grandfather and her mother, who she has been brought up by, after her grandfather tries to marry her off to an older man, and she runs away to London, taking the maid of the house who she has become close friends with her, and in London searches for the father that she has never known. She trains to be a nurse, and when World War I starts she volunteers to be a nurse on the front line in France. And so we get to follow Holly as she goes to France, and we get to follow her in her nursing career and also her relationships with various men in her life. Like everything Rosie writes, it's really compelling and exciting and quite Christmassy as well, which is lovely. Then there's also The Crofters Daughter by Eileen Ramsey, which publishes on the 12th of December. So this is another World War I saga, this time set in Scotland. And we follow from the early 1900s a young woman called Mary who lives in rural Scotland with her brother and her father. Her brother would much rather sit and read than work on the farm, but Mary loves farming and she dreams of being a farmer herself, but of course she cannot because she is a woman. But then World War I breaks out and suddenly Mary is much more in charge of the farm than she ever thought she would be. And as well as this strand, Mary finds herself kind of torn between two very different men. One is Jack, a local farmer, and the other is Robin, who is her brother's best friend. But as well as following Mary herself, we follow Robin and her brother Ian as well. And in fact, one of my absolute favourite things about The Crofters Daughter is the way this book looks at post-traumatic stress disorder and follows both of these young men's very different experiences with the war and how that affects them in a really powerful and psychologically complex way. The way The Crofters Daughter looks at the kind of social and psychological impacts of World War I is really fascinating and very well done. And then the very final book I want to mention in this video that I have been working on is not actually out yet. This is coming out on the 6th of February and it is The Foundling by Stacey Hall. This is a historical reader group / literary fiction novel. Everything else I've mentioned so far is being published under the imprint Zaffa. This is going to be published under the imprint Manila Press, which is the more like literary half of Bonnier fiction, Zaffa being the more commercial half. I work across both imprints. So some of you may remember that I read Stacey Hall's first novel, The Familiars, earlier this year and really loved it. I didn't work on The Familiars. At that point I wasn't working on Stacey Hall's, but we've had a little bit of a shift of who works on what at work, and I'm now working on Stacey Hall's books going forward. which is really exciting because, as you know, I'm a very big fan of historical fiction. So The Foundling is set in 18th century London, and we follow two very different women from two very different backgrounds. So our main character is Bess Bright, who at the very beginning of the book leaves her infant child at the Foundling Hospital, which is a real place that existed in London, which took in a small number of babies to care for them when their parents were not able to. Bess is poor, she lives with her father and her brother, she works as a shrimp seller or a hawker. She's an unmarried mother, and the father of her baby daughter has died in the last few months, so she gives her child up for adoption at the very beginning of the book. And then 6 years later, she has saved up enough money and improved her situation enough that she thinks she will be able to look after her daughter Clara. So she goes back to the Foundling Hospital to collect her, only to find that someone else has got there first and already collected her under Bess's name. And then at the same time, we follow another woman called Alexandra, who is from the upper classes, who is a widow, who lives alone with her daughter and servants and only leaves the house once a week for church. She is nervous and paranoid and tries to keep all of her emotions at bay, but of course her past is catching up with her. I'm very excited to have been working on this book, and I'm really excited to work on Stacey's books in the future. She's a fantastic writer of historical reading group fiction that really explores kind of social issues facing women at a particular time. And also her books have that thing that I love about reading group fiction that I've mentioned before, where there is a perfect balance between like really interesting exploration of social themes, really interesting psychologically complex characters, and also a really dramatic plot that really keeps you reading all of the way through. If you really love The Familiars or you like the sound of The Foundling, then do go and pre-order it. It's gonna be a good one, guys. And yeah, those are some of the books that I have been working on lately. I will do another one of these videos in 6 months or so and talk about what I have been working on. As you can see, I work across like quite a broad range of books, from kind of really commercial stuff like Saga to much more like reading group / literary stuff like The Foundling. I really enjoy working on such a range, and I like talking about such a range. And also, of course, I love the fact that a lot of the things I work on are historical because I love history so much. I feel like especially what I've been talking about today is very historically focused. I think that's partly because like winter is a good time for historical fiction as well. So yeah, I hope this video was interesting. Please let me know down in the comments if you have any questions. And yeah, I will do another one of these videos in the future because I enjoy telling you about what I have been working on. And that's all. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll be back very soon with another bookish video.